What's up, everyone? This is the Go Long Podcast. Tyler Dunn here with Jim Monis on a rainy Monday here in Western New York. Jim, you've got your good luck hat on, which is nice to see. Starting the week off right. How's life?
Tyler, you're right. On a rainy morning like this, it put me in this. The weekend was great. So I'm in a good mood Monday morning. I like our pod today, what we're going to talk about. The gambling gods were very nice to me this weekend. Golf was good. So Patrick Cantlay, great job. Top 5 finish this weekend in the PGA. So in a good mood today. So I had to put the good luck hat on that I sometimes wear when I may be playing a little blackjack.
Does it work? What's the track record?
No.
Okay.
Do rally hats, let me ask you this. Rally hats, baseball, I don't know what the percent on rally hats probably, if I'd like to see what the actual percentage is of the times you put the rally hat backwards and how many times it works. Because you have to be, I'm very analytical. So to do it right, you have to know the amount of times you actually put the rally hat on. So to answer your question, there's no way this hat could be good luck. It's not possible because you're just never going to win.
You're not superstitious. You're just stitious.
There you go. I like that.
I had a friend in growing up whose father kept a jar of his children's toenails on his television when he was looking for a big play. We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you're going to bust out the toenails at the blackjack table. Is that a possibility?
Tyler, that you just went down a road I can't even wrap my head around.
And then how does fungus work into the equation? I imagine that would have a reverse effect, right? Then things would just go haywire.
I'm not going to tell you the name of this coach, but I was in a draft meeting in a draft room, on a Saturday or Sunday morning when it's very relaxed atmosphere, okay? And the coach, I'll give you at least the team I was working with. It was the New Orleans Saints. But there was a coach that put his bare foot up on the table during the meeting. I can't talk toenails, feet in a meeting. That's a bad look. It's a bad look. I can't. You just took me down a road that made me think of that. And that coach is a really good coach. So I'm not going to say anything else about him. But
you sure? I mean, come on, just let it rip.
No.
We'll get it out of you. We'll get it out of you by the end of the show.
But it's just that toenail thing. That's insane.
Yeah, it was odd. It was odd even as a kid, which you don't find many things odd. It was strange.
Not many things, right.
Did not expect us to go down this road. Don't you think we all kind of moved on from Rex Ryan's foot fetish just a little too quickly? I mean, that happened and it was on Deadspin and there was the video of him talking to his wife. And it was so bizarre. Yet, and then Wes Welker had the press conference, right, where he referenced feet in umpteenth ways, and then it just kind of went away. I feel like that was so strange. We probably shouldn't have just kind of let that go. He probably should have endured a little bit more backlash than he did, unless I missed it.
I don't know about that. I'm not going to talk about
it. Not backlash. Maybe just it was.
You mean just talked about more?
There should have just been a little more discourse.
I don't think
more discourse.
I think Rex is a pretty open book about that whole thing.
Is he really? Did you guys ask him about it?
Rex is an open book about it. I just want to say that. It's all good.
I mean, does that come up in the interview process?
No, I mean, I'm not saying about that, but just in general, it's all good. It's out in the open. Nobody really cares. I mean, it's talked, it's whatever. But he doesn't hide from it. He owns it. Whatever.
Well, credit to him then. You're right.
I'm a big believer.
We do need more of that.
Just own things. Like I own your mistakes on a draft pick. Own it. You know, and that's why I always like talking about that. Like, what's so bad? What's the big deal about owning up? Great baseball players strike out. Like they don't. It doesn't ruin their day.
I mean, survival instinct kicks in, I think, with scouts, with personnel execs, with GMs, with coaches. And
Yeah,
I
you're
mean, you
right.
see it. And I
You're
mean,
right.
we both talk to people around the league. And as soon as a player starts to kind of teeter and go downhill, and people start kind of getting a little distance. Well, it was such and such who really liked him, and I mean it's typical NFL stuff. Everybody's reaching for the lifeboats.
It is because you are in you man. That's well said by you. You are always in survival mode when you're an employee in the NFL. Actually, yeah, if you're working, playing, I almost think that's for any job. I'm to the
Then
point.
you're trying to get the owner's ear, right? You're trying to let the owner know, well, I really like this guy or I didn't like that guy. And you're hoping that this owner who's probably dealing with a billion things as a billionaire is keeping this mental log of, okay, I like the cut of this guy's jib because he had the instincts there. But it might be wrong. Maybe the guy's just flat out lying. Newsflash, people lie in the NFL.
I was
Some
told
in positions
early.
of power, some that, stay in positions of power.
I was told early in scouting, if you're going to live up and pump your chest, and brag about the guys you were right on, you have to own the guys you miss on. And you haven't missed. If you haven't missed, you are just, if you can't bring up a miss, I can't imagine that type of person. Like you talk,
And you
okay,
know what?
Aaron Rodgers. If Aaron Rodgers was a scout, because you're going to miss and you're going to be, I would just love, he would be the great test to see, could Aaron Rodgers admit if he was wrong scouting a player? Do you think?
No,
Okay.
I do not. I can't see that
That's
scenario.
my point. That would be the type of person to me, like that. I just don't know anybody that in
Well,
scouting
I
that.
mean, that's the perfect example because, in his airing of grievances when he showed up to training camp a couple years ago after, holding the Packers hostage and all that, he went through player to player to player to player right there at the podium for the Green Bay Packers, just blasting the general manager that he wanted fired, who he made clear, I need this person fired to return, and said how the Packers lost their way because they stopped caring for people. It's like, well, no, actually, half or more than half of the examples that Aaron laid out as a pseudo GM, the Packers were right to move on from that player. Yet, here we go, round and round, New York Jets bringing in Randall Cobb, getting the boys back together. So, yeah,
Tyler,
to answer your
that's
question, I don't think he'd make a good scout or an honest scout whatsoever.
what you just said too is great about. He has basically put this Jets offense together. They have catered. It's incredible. It really truly is. It is basically the Jets. I'm just thinking about Joe Douglas right now as the GM, putting his hands up. You know
Yeah.
what? Zach Wilson's not working. If we're going after Aaron and this is what he wants, I think I have to do it because I just made my big pick. I mean, right? If you're a GM and that's your Zach Wilson's your franchise moving forward, not working. The owner hasn't fired you yet. So why not? I get it. I completely get it. I would do it too. I swear I would do it too. It actually makes your job easy. Joe, you don't even have to evaluate. Aaron, who you want?
I mean, that's survival
That is survival.
to a T. I mean, look at
To a
Nathaniel
T.
Hackett and how he has attached himself
Hackett.
to Aaron Rodgers,
Hackett.
where it didn't work out in Buffalo. Jacksonville, look, he took Blake Bortles to an AFC Championship game. That's a
Yeah,
feather in
yeah.
the cap, but by
Did
and
a great
large, those
job.
offenses were pretty poor. And gets to Green Bay, and Aaron loves him. He loves Aaron. whatever offense was run, whether it's LaFleur's, Aaron Rodgers's, audibles from 11 years ago in a random game in Timbuktu that he's audible into. Whatever that offense was, I mean, it led to a couple MVPs. Yeah, Devontae Adams might have had something to do with that. He's pretty good. And goes to Denver. And this is where it's interesting. Maybe this is more gut instinct than direct knowledge of the situation. I'll admit it. You cannot tell me that Denver didn't think they were not getting Aaron Rodgers 2 off seasons ago. I mean, when they hired Nathaniel Hackett, it was, we're getting Aaron Rodgers. This is going to be a package deal. And obviously they didn't. They pivot to Russell Wilson, and it all blows up. And, Hackett just lands on his feet. New York Jets. Aaron's the quarterback. Speaking of being wrong, and I don't want to get ahead of ourselves too much here.
Yeah,
but
this is
the theme of this podcast is going to be who's a player on a team that's been pretty much left for dead. Everybody's forgotten about. Yeah, we see this player potentially bouncing back and reminding everybody that, hey, I'm still here. And they go through a little bit of a resurrection in 2023. And I guess kind of the player that I chose is somebody who it's a hill that I kind of climbed up on not too long ago. And I suppose I'll just stay on that hill because I easily could just hold my hand up and say, yes, I was wrong. If I was a scout, I was dead wrong about this working out. But I'm going to do a 180 and say that he's going to deliver in 2023. But really what got us into the topic was Zay Jones. We have a story up at Go Long. Flew down to Jacksonville, spent 2 hours chatting with Zay about everything. Jim, I wasn't really sure if he would want to go down certain dark roads in his life. Obviously, we all saw the TMZ clip, 30 floors high, Los Angeles condo. And it's crazy is what we see isn't really what happened. All we see is Zay Jones naked, saying he wants to fight for Jesus. His brother, holding him back. They get into a tussle. You hear his brother's girlfriend screech. And then, boom, it cuts forward to the aftermath of the blood all over the walls, the busted up windows. But yeah, I mean, he tried to throw himself from that window, and he would have plummeted to his death if not for his brother holding him back until help arrived. And it's crazy because if you look at the window, I mean, it's all spider webbed, but there is a hole in the middle that's pretty huge. And he was trying to force his way through that hole to get outside. He doesn't know what drugs were in his system. He knows he was hanging out with some bad dudes earlier that day. He knows he wasn't seeing reality. Like the way he saw wasn't reality. So some type of psychedelic, some type of hallucination was going on, which, by the way, Aaron Rodgers just gave a speech in Colorado about why psychedelics should be legal. Maybe the counter is Zay Jones, right? Maybe psychedelics not all fun and games and turns you into an MVP. Maybe a psychedelic can potentially have you falling 30 floors high. Obviously, I don't know what Zay Jones took. Zay Jones doesn't know what Zay Jones took. He didn't want a toxicology report because, he could get him into some more trouble, and he needed to leave that in the past. But credit to Zay for being willing to open up on this all. He was unbelievable. If you haven't, I would love it if you checked out our story, golongtd.com. I'm Still Alive, the Zay Jones story. We really take it from childhood. His dad's life is unreal. My God, is it Robert Jones, 3-time Super Bowl champ for the Dallas Cowboys? Robert Jones is being breastfed by his mother when Robert Jones's father shoots his mother. 8 kids scatter all different directions. Had a brother die for this reason, a brother die for that reason, mentors died. I mean, it's unbelievable. Robert Jones is a miracle. Zay Jones is a miracle. And what kind of got us going on the topic for this podcast was when that happened to Zay, right? That's after his rookie season in Buffalo, which went horribly. He has this incident in March of 2018. The Bills kind of reset, draft Josh Allen. He's the pseudo number one. They're going through this transition, getting contracts off the books for better or worse, right? I mean, hey, I know Sammy Watkins had helped their draft capital, but as Zay said, as a rookie, I needed somebody over there to take some pressure off because he's facing the number one corner week in and week out, has the potential game-winning drop against Carolina, goes 0 for 0 for 0 against Denver, and then boom, he slipped into that depression, drinking at his apartment, which was right around the corner from where I live. Never even saw him, never even knew. In a really, really bad place. March of 2018 happens, catches a bunch of balls in year 2, and then that's when they sign Cole Beasley, John Brown into year 3, trade him to the Raiders. And I think at that point, Jim, nobody thought we'd really hear from Zay Jones again. A lot of times, you go viral for all of the wrong reasons, let alone being naked and yelling and trying to throw yourself through a window. And we don't hear from you for another 10, 15, 20 years until the 30 for 30 pops up, right? But Zay Jones got his life back together some way, somehow, with the Oakland Raiders, then the Las Vegas Raiders, and then the Jacksonville Jaguars, to the point of signing a 3-year, $24 million deal. A slew of just clutch catches for the Jags. The 2-point conversion against the Ravens, the 3 touchdowns against Dallas, this one pass to set up the game-winning field goal. It's crazy. It went right through the defender's arms. He completely turned his life around, completely turned his career around. So we're each going to have a player who could maybe have a similar bounce back in the Zay Jones vein today. But first, Jim, take us back to your vantage point on this all, because you and Doug Whaley were still around, obviously, for that draft. That was your last draft with the Buffalo Bills. Sean McDermott is the head coach. People, as we've mentioned a few times on this podcast, people forget that you guys had your fingerprints all over this draft, and Zay Jones was the second-round pick after Tre'Davious White. So what are your memories from just the draft process that led to selecting the wide receiver who caught more balls than anybody in the 153-year history of college football?
Okay, I love that you just said that, because that's where I was going to go with Zay a little bit. Like, the production was video game craziness in college, like insane, and didn't really have any, if I remember, no special quarterbacks. It was
a little bit of Gardner Minshew, but that was about it.
It was that weird. They were having like right. Minshew was part of the whole mess.
You're right. It was a bunch of guys.
A bunch of guys.
They won 3 games this last year. They really weren't that good.
No. So he was to me. So you watch Zay. He was one of those you just felt plug and play right away. No issues. Senior, max physically, he wasn't like over the top gifted physically as far as speed, quickness. He was a size receiver who played big, good hands. I look back on it. I think I was probably a little high on him as far as valuing him. I thought he could be a number 1 possibly. We had our area scouts and some other guys weren't as high on him in the draft room, but everybody saw value in him, and everybody that we spoke with had him as high character. And like we said, we hired, Sean McDermott hired his receiver coach from East Carolina. And I mean, he was excited couldn't wait to work with him. So we had that was a whole team on board. Let's see how he does. I think it was a good pick. I look back on it, a good pick as far as talent. Second round type talent. We should not have traded up for Zay, probably. That was probably something I look back on. The trade ups, my history of trade ups, if I ever was doing anything differently, I would probably be very hesitant to trade up for a player.
Zay Jones.
Unless it was a quarterback.
Right. In that case, you may just have to trade.
In that case, you're going all in for somebody. Yeah.
So he thought he was going to the Rams. Sean McVay, Les Snead, Greg Olson, Eric Yarber, everybody flew out to ECU. They brought their own quarterback, put him through this workout. Zay Jones, by the way, unbelievable impersonations. It's like Frank Caliendo. it's and Christian Kirk told me this. He's like, you got to get him going on some impressions. But he was pretending to be Sean McVay at this workout. He's like, oh, Zay, man, you're so smart. You ran that route so good. Uh, so he thought the workout went great. And so when he didn't go in the first round, remember a few receivers went bang, bang, bang.
Yeah.
Mike Williams, John Ross.
That may be why we traded up.
Yeah. Forgetting somebody there. I just don't want to let this slide. Oh, Corey Davis went 5th overall. That's right. So Corey Davis 5th, Mike Williams 7th, John Ross 9th. Ooh. And then there was nothing the rest of the first round. So he just assumed, okay, the Rams are going to take me in round 2 at 37. The Cardinals took Budda Baker 36. And then that's when his phone rang. That's when the Buffalo Bills called, asked for his official first name, social security number, nearest airport. Right. And, oh, yeah, he's wearing a shirt that has all the white Broncos chasing a police car. And Bills fans didn't like that. Zay Jones is like, I just picked this shit up earlier in the day. I didn't really think anything of it.
I like that.
Do you remember that? I mean, because you were still around the weekend, the backlash. No?
I don't even remember that.
And yeah, I mean, Phil McKeegan, right? He's the wide receivers coach.
You know why I don't remember that?
That was the connection.
You know why I don't remember that? Because we got fired. I guarantee, because I checked out. Like that's that, you know what I mean? Like you get like, whoa, what just happened type thing moment. I was like, that's why I'm like, well, I wasn't even paying attention to what was going on at that point. That's probably why I don't remember or remember that story. But yeah, so would you say, see, the reason you said he was surprised that we drafted him because we didn't, or he didn't feel like we spent a ton of time, I guess, but it was because we had his receiver coach and we just had no concerns with him. I'm just surprised he didn't think that his college receivers coach was. I'm just surprised he didn't think there was a chance maybe that, yeah.
He said that they would talk, but it was like kind of surface level that Phil didn't really show his hand when they'd catch up.
That's actually
which is admirable.
That is. I'm actually surprised to hear that.
What I think a lot of people don't know, what kind of gets lost when we consume pro football is what we discussed with Sammy Watkins. What are these guys doing outside of NFL Sunday, outside of plugging in the fantasy football lineup, filling up a stadium, sitting at home watching TV? It's that just 2.5, 3 hours out of the week. Similar to the receiver he replaced, Zay Jones, when things started going downhill, he went downhill. And similar to Sammy Watkins, right? When Sammy Watkins' brother gets tied up into this massive RICO investigation, he's involved with the feds, family, friends, all tied up in this racketeering case. He's paying $1 million to bail out his brother. That's kind of what really sent Sammy even into more of a hole, right? He's still going through all those injuries and can't stay healthy. Zay has the incident in LA, and he has since turned it around really in a way similar to Sammy. Sammy Watkins, he won a Super Bowl. He burnt Richard Sherman in the Super Bowl. And Zay Jones hasn't gotten to that moment, but he could this year. I would not be surprised if Jacksonville threatened in 2023. So, okay, I don't think we're going to find anybody that was necessarily in the place Zay was in, personally, professionally, all of that. But there are a lot of guys who signed with a lot of new teams who've been through a lot of shit. I want to let you go first, Jim. Who do you see turning his life around in 2023?
Okay, so he's very young still. And his original team just decided to move on from him. So I'm going more with I just see this player being a little more talented than he's shown. His numbers, I think, can be good, really good. Elijah Moore, who is now on the Cleveland Browns. His ability as a game breaker when he has the ball in his hands is special. And the Jets were it was just tough. When things get I've been a part of it. When things are average, just say average at quarterback, it's hard enough. If it's below average, like it was with the Jets, your receivers are going to struggle. And the reason I'm always going to say that is always remember who we had at receiver in Buffalo when Whaley and I were here. We had Robert Woods, Sammy Watkins, Marquise Goodwin, um, Chris Hogan. Like, but they all had way better success once they left. I'm going with Elijah Moore. I think the talent's there. I think he was in a garbage situation. Cleveland, there's something about Cleveland right now. I hate it. I hate that I even want to talk about because I told you before how bad Deshaun Watson played last year. But we all know Deshaun Watson can play. And a guy like that is not coming. He is not leaving that film. That's not going to be the last film he's showing. So I think Moore is going to be part of this offense where they need him. You know, Amari Cooper's their one. Then they have Peoples as kind of a bigger receiver. Then they got Njoku at tight end, who we know him as a game breaker. Moore fits that third to just get him the ball, get creative with him, let him return. That's my player, Tyler. I'm looking for some big things from him.
I like it. And I don't know if it's going to work out because you never really know if things are going to work out for the Cleveland Browns.
His attitude is, from what I understand, right on the fence as far as he needs to. If he's not getting the ball, I don't know how he handles that, and that's something. Yes, you're right.
Well, I can't speak to Elijah Moore. Just in terms of the Browns, I guess I'm cautiously excited about what they did this offseason because Deshaun Watson, we'll see. I mean, can he rekindle the magic, that ability? I mean, when he was at his best, pre-scandal, pre-Texans disaster, when he still had DeAndre Hopkins, it was special. I mean, he would just dance and prance and juke and improvise. He was untouchable, really, from the word go. I mean, as a rookie, when we first saw him in a Bill O'Brien offense that, I mean, it really wasn't a Deshaun Watson offense. He kind of created his own offense on the fly. Like it was like playing with your buddies in the backyard. Gosh, if he can get back to that, and I don't know how he does it, maybe just a little more distance from controversy doesn't do it justice. I mean, what he was accused of is disgusting.
Time heals
all. If we're talking about football strictly, there is a little more time away from that where mentally maybe he can think about football and become the player he was. I'll just say this. I kind of like what they did all over the place. You've got some smart football people in Andrew Berry, Glenn Cook, who spent a number of years in Green Bay. Kevin Stefanski was a coach of the year. We'll get to him a little later on in the show. But look at some of these signings. I just pulled up their spot track. I mean, Delvin Tomlinson, that's big money, D tackle, 4 years, $57 million. I mean, if you really look at it, they wanted the strength in just the middle of their defense at every level, all the way back to safety. Juan Thornhill, 3 years, $21 million. He was really good in Kansas City's defense. And they didn't really stop there. I mean, a ton of sneaky signings. Jordan Atkins at tight end. Zadarius Smith. They acquire him from Minnesota. You never know what is kind of going through his mind, as the Packer fans who listen know. And we obviously had a big story on him and how excited he was about the Vikings, and that didn't work out. In his defense, the Vikings are in this weird place, and we'll get into them more in depth on a future show. This competitive rebuild, are you going for it? Are you not going for it? There was probably a little more behind the scenes with him than we knew. But for what the Browns want to do, and you want another pass rusher opposite Myles Garrett, can do a lot worse than Zadarius Smith. You still have Nick Chubb. You still have David Njoku. Amari Cooper.
We didn't talk about.
You never know where these receivers go. And guess, here's a name for you, Marquise Goodwin.
I saw that today. I was going to bring him up. And we didn't bring up just that entire offensive line. Just rock solid, tough.
Right, one of the best offensive lines in football.
So that's a
With
team
a
that's a wild card
gigantic
team.
Watson
You don't
question.
like if you're the Chiefs and Bills, Baltimore always thinks about the Browns, but Chiefs, Bills, they don't, they're thinking about their division, Mahomes, Josh Allen, quarterback. You forgot about Watson. It's almost like he's the forgot. If he is coming back like he was playing at a highest level with that surrounding cast, I mean, that's a running game with an offensive line. That is every team that has a franchise quarterback's nightmare because that team's going to be able can dictate kind of ball control. If they have that lead in the fourth quarter, they're tough to come back on. Because they can hammer it down. Right? So that is a team. I bet the Bill. They don't want those are. You always hear that team in basketball. Man, you don't want to see that team early in the playoffs. That would be the Browns. You don't want to see them like if Watson's playing like Watson.
You might as well go for it if you're the Browns, right? You might as well convince yourself that you can win a Super Bowl this season
No
because of
doubt.
the money you gave Watson,
No
the
doubt.
3 first-round draft picks that you gave up to acquire him. Like,
Yes.
if you didn't do this, you would be failing as an
Yes.
organization.
Yes to all of that. Well said.
I just don't know if it's going to work out, especially in that division. Cincinnati,
Tyler.
Baltimore,
Tyler.
Pittsburgh's never going anywhere.
I don't know if it's going to work out either.
You can get all excited about the Cleveland Browns, and they could go, 6-11 easily.
Charles Barkley.
And last.
Beat Charles Barkley. You could always beat Charles Barkley. I mean, he was so dominant. He was the most talented. I wasn't even a Barkley fan, but I look back and just love and respect his talent. He was so unstoppable, and that's just hard, man. You just run into the wrong era.
I feel like we should almost have like a preface to every single podcast, and just to remind everybody, this is Patrick Mahomes' league, and
that's where
it's going to be really hard for everybody
Yep.
else.
Yep. And we're gonna, you know what? We'll just own it. We talked about it. Let's own it. We're gonna own it. We will always say we agree. He's possibly. I think he's the greatest ever.
I think when it's all said and done, he will be the greatest.
Yeah, Brady's resume. I know
greatest player ever.
We won't do that whole thing, but
yeah. But Elijah Moore, I like that. Anything else on Elijah? Like, I don't really know anything about him. Like, what makes him a good receiver? I know nothing about Elijah Moore.
Like his hands, his route running, his ability to get in and out of cuts is rare. I love that. I think that is what separates people. Like, if you can when you're special with the ball in your hands, that can run routes. That is a nightmare to defend. Now, you have to be on the same page with your quarterback and all that, and when you're playing the slot, because there's a lot of juke routes that, based on the coverage, that the quarterback, he sees it. He's thinking you're going right. You better not. You better be going right because he's throwing it. And if you go left, that's picked. I only know that because that was Drew Brees. That was Drew Brees used to tell the receivers all the time.
I'm pulling up his numbers here.
That's what makes him good, though. His and speed. I mean, he can run too. Tyler, you should see his stats in the SEC. What he did at Ole Miss. He played at Fort Lauderdale at I think that's St. Thomas Aquinas that you always hear about them in Fort Lauderdale. He goes to Ole Miss and destroys the SEC, which when you destroy the SEC for me, I'm not going to overthink my scouting ability. I'm going to probably assume you're pretty good.
86 grabs, 1,193 yards, 8 touchdowns his last year at Ole Miss in the SEC against the best corners in football. And his numbers actually, considering you're catching passes from Zach Wilson and Mike White, I mean, not terrible. As a rookie, he did catch 43 balls for 538 and 5 touchdowns. So you don't just stop. If I learned anything from Zay Jones, it's not like Zay Jones forgot how to catch a football. He caught more footballs than anybody in college football history. It was all mental. He says 99% mental. And that's you can't talk about that enough, too. Everybody who's in the NFL is extremely talented. Probably the best player at their high school, best player in college. Like, the NFL just weeds out all the bums. and all the slappies. Great scouting term that needs to enter mainstream lexicon, by the
It's
way,
like
slappy.
it's when you say that, sometimes I cringe, or I think I'm in a draft room or a film room
You did
somewhere.
cringe a little when I said that.
It's a little bit hard for me to hear. It becomes. Go ahead though. I don't want to tell you. You're right.
No, I'm just taking myself off another tangent. So, I mean, that's the thing with the NFL. Like, this is the very best of the best of the best. And so Zay Jones's career, it didn't go off the rails necessarily because he dropped that pass against the Carolina Panthers, like the physical act of dropping that pass, fourth down, last drive of the game. It was the reaction to that. It's how do you respond from something that went very, very poorly. And he had never dealt with criticism in his life before, ever. He was always the underdog. Two-star guy out of high school. His brother's way more highly recruited than himself. Because East Carolina kind of relishes that role. And for the first time, people are telling him, you suck. You can't catch. And he didn't know how to handle it, didn't know how to deal with it. And he didn't know how to deal with facing, Marcus Peters, Stephon Gilmore, Morris Claiborne, Desmond Trufant. Every team's number one. So a guy like Elijah Moore, I think that it's important to remember there are players who that was a dumpster fire last year with the Jets with Zach Wilson. So,
and like you said about Elijah Moore, when you read those stats, whenever you see a young player, like obviously the Jets, Joe Douglas valued him, they drafted him high. But when you see that roller coaster of production, that it usually says the quarterback situation probably, and they're just struggling to find a role for him. When you just can't get that consistent production, that's on everybody. And that's why they moved on from him. That and the new GM, Aaron Rodgers, was not a fan, I guess, of Elijah.
Hey, you got to make room for Randall Cobb. You just have to make room on that roster for a proven, reliable skeleton of a football player.
That is a man. Elijah, I'd love to ask every NFL GM right now.
Elijah Moore or Randall Cobb? Oh, goodness. All right, it has got to be hard. Last point on this, although, it's got to be so hard as a GM or director of personnel to know which players are going to be able to respond from that adversity. Like you think you know, but you don't know. I mean, no. Zay Jones's character was through the roof at ECU, still is. I mean, you mentioned community service to him, and he cringes because it's it feels like that term is punishment. You hear that and it sounds like a bad thing. He did it because he enjoyed it. He did it all the time. 3.6 GPA, living in the weight room, all of that stuff. He's the last human being you'd ever expect to get hopped up on whatever he was that night.
Yes.
Yeah. It just goes to show how this business, working in a front office, I don't got to tell you, man, so much out of your control. You don't know what's going to happen. All right. Jim Onis.
I want to hear
player who is going to completely get his career back on track this season. I hope you're sitting down. Baker Mayfield.
I love
Baker Mayfield, baby.
I love this.
We're not giving up on Baker here on the Go Long podcast. This is the year. This is the time. On team number 4 for your 2018 first overall pick out of Oklahoma, the Heisman Trophy winner, Baker Mayfield, to bounce back. Granted, he's in a quarterback competition technically right now with Kyle Trask. He's going to win that competition, and he's going to play well. I don't know, what the barometer is here, the expectation, he'll do this. I think that the Buccaneers are going to win 7 games, 8 games, maybe 9 games, maybe with the division. I think they're going to be better than most people think. The defense is still loaded with a lot of the same players who made Patrick Mahomes' life hell in the Super Bowl not too long ago. And I really like what they're doing on offense with Dave Canales. New offensive coordinator coming in. Granted, you lose Tom Brady. You lose the greatest player of all time. That's why everybody believes Tampa could be the worst team in the NFL and could be vying for Caleb Williams next spring. And maybe they are. Maybe they are going for Caleb Williams. Well, we'll see. I feel like they have too many prideful players to lose too much this year in a bad division. And you look at, we'll get to Baker, but just look at the defense alone. Devin White, Levante David, Shaq Barrett, Carlton Davis, Jamel Dean, Antoine Winfield. And then you go over to offense. Mike Evans, no signs of slowing down. All he does is get 1,000 yards every single season. Chris Godwin is your number 2. He's a number 1 on a lot of teams. Russell Gage, pretty good number 3. Rashad White, I think, is going to break out and have himself quite a season. Now, the offensive line was really bad last year, so that's obviously the question mark there. But, I mean, Cody Mauch, to bring him in at guard, the toothless wonder, may or may not have spent a little time with Cody down there in Tampa on our trip.
I like that toothless wonder.
Oh, yeah. He had his teeth busted out in a basketball game when he was a kid, and he never had him replaced. It's incredible. So if that run, I mean, the offensive line is going to have to be better, obviously. But I love the hire of Dave Canales. He's been in Seattle since 2010. Started as a receivers coach, moved to quarterbacks coach. He was really the driving force behind Geno Smith. We talk about players left for dead. Geno Smith, I mean, we didn't even see him start a game, throw a chunk of passes, it felt like, for 5, 6, 7 years. Complete 69.8% of his passes, 30 touchdowns, 11 picks. They were leading San Francisco at halftime of that playoff game. And against the best defense in football, he went 25 of 35 for 253 yards, a pair of touchdowns. If you watched the Seattle game, everything was on time, on schedule, everything you could want out of just a game plan with a little bit of flow to it. And on my trip down there to Tampa, the sense I got is this is an offense that it will be completely different, and it's going to be without Tom Brady. But you think of Tom Brady, it was very sitting duck. He wasn't moving much. It was take a shotgun snap, make a decision, get the ball out. They're going to get the quarterback on the move. I think that it will be a true system. Like they will have a real system for Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield's going to win the job. He'll win the job. I can't see Kyle Trask winning it. And he's going to step into a situation that, granted, offensive line, huge question mark, but they addressed it from purely your skill position players. This is about as good as Baker Mayfield's ever had it. I can see him excelling. I can see Baker Mayfield figured it out with Dave Canales. It's been a crazy, crazy 18 months. Oh, 18 months. His whole career. You mentioned Kevin Stefanski, coach of the year in 2020, 11-5. First time the Browns are in the playoffs since 2002. Baker is a major reason for that. Tears his labrum in 2021. Non-throwing shoulder, but not himself. Hurts himself. I mean, isn't it crazy? Not too long ago, we were all, this time of year, 2 years ago, we're talking about Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Baker Mayfield up for extensions. And he was in that conversation. That season falls apart. I'm glad we got into Deshaun Watson. They hand Deshaun Watson the most guaranteed money ever, $230 million, the 3 first-round picks. Chris Mortensen, who's, as you said several times, in the know.
Yeah, he's in.
If he says something, you need to listen. Quote, they want what they consider an adult at that position. So the Browns were pretty fed up with Baker Mayfield. And he gets to Carolina late in the game, training camp, doesn't play well. LA Rams had the 98-yard drive to beat the Raiders. Pretty impressive for Baker Mayfield. Still in there. $1:45 to go, down 16-10. I just rewatched it to kind of get myself all jacked up for Baker Mayfield. That's why we started this podcast a little late, Jim. On the punt that led to that 98-yard. I mean, we'll be talking about it for generations. The night on Thursday Night Football that Baker Mayfield led the 3-9 Rams on a 98-yard touchdown. I mean, I think Canton should really just carve out some space for this, honestly. But on the punt,
How many days was he on the team?
that's the thing. Barely any. He's throwing to, I mean, Ben Skowronek and Van Jefferson and some guy named Atwell and Brandon Powell. Yeah, like he didn't even know any of these guys. So, but and it was just hilarious to see the punt that led to it because you never see celebrations on punts. Mac Hollins for the Raiders was doing the gritty, doing the gritty over the ball as it rolls to the 2-yard line.
Mac Hollins is a guy we spent so much time with before the draft in Buffalo. Like, yes, loved him.
Still
for what he's
strong.
doing, exactly what he is. He's a special team monster. But you know why you and I you're not going to believe who I was going to say. Instead, I used Elijah Moore, but the guy I was going to say was Sam Darnold.
Sam Darnold. Wouldn't surprise me.
Because
Kyle Shanahan,
point, I think they're the most loaded team. But here's the thing. I don't know if he's going to be the starter. But I swear to you, from what I hear, it's his let's just say he's not a fast processor as far as just there's a reason the turnovers never stopped at USC, never stopped with the Jets, never stopped in Carolina. That it's not going to stop. I always believe if there's a guy that maybe could get it out of him, maybe it's 49ers and Shanahan, but I don't know if he's even going to be the guy. So I was like, I'm not going to do that because he may not even play. But he was somebody I was thinking about. Like yeah. That team is loaded, I think. I think that 49ers team is so loaded.
It's almost like they have to show their respect to Brock Purdy when Mr. Irrelevant takes you to the conference championship game and God, he didn't make a mistake the whole run. But I think you're right. I think that at some point we'll see Darnold out there. I don't know when.
Who knows?
What about Baker? What are your thoughts on Baker?
Yeah, Tyler. I have. I will say this. I was like
you have let the ship sail.
Well, you brought up a great point though, because 2 years ago I was thinking about that. I was doing some stuff on a gambling show, Pickswise, and the Browns were a team I had talked about. I remember in my interview for the job, thinking they had a chance to be, one of the AFC kind of sneak up on the Bills. Man, what a disaster that year was. But you're right. That injury, it's crazy how these guys, Mayfield's so tough, will fight, play through anything, do anything you ask. And your reward as he's fighting to come back from an injury is Deshaun Watson. That's got to be that's a hard pill to swallow, no doubt.
There's always been two ways to look at Baker Mayfield. Either he is this gamer that guys want to fight for, run through a wall for. The Browns, that's what they kind of fell in love with. Was it – I got to pull up this story. Yeah, Scott McCloughan. I talked to him for a Baker Mayfield story a couple of years ago, and he was a consultant for the Browns before they made that pick. He spent a number of years with the Packers, with Ron Wolf, obviously around Brett Favre, seeing how guys kind of gravitate to the position. He made a really compelling case for how Baker is different and why that position is just different. And you can't just have a robot in there who's a mute, and you need somebody that can inspire. And you've seen that at times in Cleveland. And then I think it was Quincy Avery, who ironically is Deshaun Watson's personal quarterbacks coach. And this would have been the Anthony Richardson column that I had before the draft. And hard to argue with the point he made too. He said, quote, "We try to teach a lot of things, but if a quarterback's not confident enough, he's not going to be good enough. Even if you have irrational confidence, I don't care what anybody says. Baker Mayfield was never that good, but he was so confident that it ended up working out for a little bit." So maybe he's right. Maybe Baker is this raw cockiness to him that just compelled him to Heisman trophies and breaking the
No,
Browns playoff run.
I would say this. I can just from grading him in the NFL, he was playing at a good starter level. He wasn't playing elite. He didn't look like number one, but he had games where you did see, just that gritty pocket, just beautiful delivery, timing, keeping the receivers moving, but it's not consistent enough. His overall physical skill set is very average. But yeah, Tyler, I'm hoping Tampa's not very good because I have some invested interest in the Atlanta Falcons this year. So, and for Baker's physical skill set, I just don't think it's special enough to consistently make those throws that just elevate and separate you and make you the difference and being a number one pick. He is almost that hard hustle player that you see, but like I said, I've watched enough, and it's hard for me to think there's going to be a lot more there. But you did make a good point. You're around champions, Super Bowl champions. He's a champion. He's done it. High level. I just, I'm trying for you on that
one. You don't have to. It's okay.
No. I like where you're going with it because once again, you know what I was talking about? I was also talking about that I'm hoping he's not too good because I have an invested interest in the Atlanta Falcons this year, their win total, because I'm counting Tampa as a not very good team.
I like those Falcons myself. It's a roster that is very deep. Offense loaded with playmakers now. No questions on their offensive line.
Anyway, we know their quarterback situations.
We know you drafted Derek Carr pretty high in the quarterback draft.
That's the team in that division that is going to make a run. They have some veteran toughness. That defense, that Demario Davis, Cam Jordan. I don't know if you could find two tougher. Like veteran.
They just go for it every year. There's no guesswork with the Saints. Doesn't matter what's going on at quarterback at this point.
Michael Thomas
want to go for it. All these contracts, they constantly restructure. It's like they want to keep the band together as long as they can. I like Tampa's defense, and maybe folks are going to hear from one of those playmakers on defense that go along relatively soon. Carlton Davis had a few things to say that were eye-popping. I don't know how it's going to work out with Baker. All I know is it's probably going to be fun to watch because it is entertaining with Baker Mayfield. Anything else,
as long as he beats out Kyle Trask.
Yeah, I think we'll have that covered.
I do too.
We're going to have another podcast soon with the great Ollie Connolly of the Read Optional, one of the best analysts in the sport itself. He talks to NFL coaches regularly. My God, I mean, if you need to learn about how this game really works, check out Ollie's work, and you're going to hear from him on the next episode. So can't wait for that, Jim. In the meantime, it stopped raining, so that's nice. And I hear the kids downstairs, so I should probably, check in and pull my weight a little bit. What do you say?
That's our cue.
All right, we'll see everybody. Thanks a lot.